has had his allegiance to the tribal chief and nothing else. Barely, if ever, has Solo faltered, and when he has, Roman has been scared to punish him. He was the reason why Roman retained at WrestleMania. He was the reason why Roman retained at Clash at the Castle when the other two couldn't attend the show. He was brought in when Roman started to see that the Usos just weren't enough. The role Solo plays is enforcer. He's aimlessly on Roman's side. When a job needs to be handled, it's not the ones who have been with Roman from the start that he looks to, but the one he knows will sink to any measure necessary to get the win. Something
That's
that
what's
the
up.
Usos won't do. The youngest of three siblings
I got
doesn't
that
stray
hoodie,
away from
bro.
altercation. He's silent, only ever speaking when he's required to. What makes Solo such a threat in this story is Roman's aspect. He knows that with the twins, it's not a guaranteed key to victory, but with Solo, it is. So in turn, he and Paul Heyman keep him happy to feed their own future. We were told that the elders sent Solo, and out of all the characters in this story, we know the least about him. He's never shown defiance to the tribal chief, but now even he's telling Roman that he may be the tribal chief and he acknowledges him, but the other two are his brothers, two men he grew up with. On NXT, we were told that Jimmy and Jay left for WWE while he was a loner cast aside continuing to fight on his own. When he eventually hit Jimmy with a Samoan spike, Jimmy kept referencing brotherhood. Well, maybe what led Solo to turn on his own brother was that he was never brought along with them, and instead it was Roman who, in his eyes, gave him a chance, so his allegiance lies with him. He's the least fleshed out character in this entire story, but the one thing we know is he marches to the beat of his own drum. Those are the brothers, but what about the ones who aren't family? Well, that's where Sami Zayn comes in. Someone who became one of the most pivotal parts of this entire story. I talked about effectively using characters at the top, and Sami at the crux of things was a comedy character. He eventually became a voice for change in the group, someone who himself was lost and thought he needed to join a family to be accepted.
You just had to make it about you.
I ain't mean to do that.
Couldn't let us get it, huh, Roman? You couldn't let us go through and take what was ours. Why can't I be the one to provide?
Referencing brotherhood. Well, maybe what led Solo to turn on his own brother was that he was never brought along with them, and instead it was Roman who, in his eyes, gave him a chance, so his allegiance lies with him. He's the least fleshed out character in this entire story, but the one thing we know is he marches to the beat of his own drum. Those are the brothers, but what about the ones who aren't family? Well, that's where Sami Zayn comes in. Someone who became one of the most pivotal parts of this entire story. I talked about effectively using characters at the top, and Sami at the crux of things was a comedy character. He eventually became a voice for change in the group, someone who himself was lost and thought he needed to join a family to be accepted. He thought that he was being saved by the family and the validation of WWE's biggest star, when in reality it was him who came in to throw a curveball into a plan that had been going very smoothly for Roman. Even though he's not actual blood, Sami not only became an honorary Us, but a brother, and once all the dust had settled, he was the one who was loved the most by Jey Uso, the same guy who refused to let him in. When he eventually did, Sami helped expose the cracks when Jey told everyone his true feelings that he doesn't care what the tribal chief says. What ended up happening was Sami then had to make a choice, seeing that aligning with Roman didn't mean anything for him. We're talking about a family story here, and the guy on the other end was a man he considers his brother, Kevin Owens, and when that reality set in, he had no choice but to do what the others couldn't, and that was stand up to Roman. He got his championship match at Elimination Chamber where that same man humiliated him in front of his friends and family. His intentions throughout the whole Bloodline story have remained pure. Though he may have been brainwashed for a brief period, he's arguably played the most important part, setting multiple things in motion. Sami's arc wasn't to become the guy to dethrone the tribal chief. His arc was to be the first crack in the bloodline, because if there was no one who came from the outside, the bloodline wouldn't see what's going on inside. Notice how once he won the tag titles with Kevin Owens, this whole thing started to unravel exponentially, so his end goal was tag team champion, to take away that symbolism of dominance from Jimmy and Jay. And once that symbolism was gone, it put the status of the two in question. Sami making the group lose something to gain clarity, And what they've continued to do is have Sammy be a constant, constantly telling Jay that he's a good person and can do better. They haven't forgotten the
When I found out that Google was doing career certificates and they had one in data analytics, I thought it seems like an easy choice. After completing the program,
Hate them
forgotten
ads.
the pivotal role that
I ain't
Sammy
getting no
will
YouTube
continue to
bread
play
though.
in this story. When Jay finally sees the light, it'll be Sammy who opens him up to this, not